All right, we've got Delante Greer. He actually helps 6 to 8 figure professionals enjoy enhanced lifestyle and financial freedom by relieving their monetary stress, boosting cash flow, freeing up time and navigating taxes on income and investments. And we just wanted to come together and talk about money, love, and this measure of success. And we're so excited to bring together what we both do and just have a really great, raw conversation with all the burning questions and topics that people have around money and love. So, Delante, tell me what got you into all of this and what you do for people.
Well, first off, thank you for having me, Camilla. And it's a long story, so I won't bore the audience. But at a high level, I help professionals build and maintain wealth. So, as you stated, 6 to 8 figures. So that includes medical professionals, professional athletes, government officials, and Chick-fil-A owner operators. And my journey has been everything but traditional. As far as this passion that I have for helping professionals find that way to connect with their partner, I read a study some years back. This was before I was even in finance, where it showed, I think it was in Forbes, it showed that a high net worth individual actually loses up to 70% of their net worth in a divorce. So not only do you lose half of your assets most of the time, you have to pay for the attorneys and then change of lifestyle. And I was just thinking, wow, if people could maybe figure out how to stick together, they might save money. And then there's an old song where they say it's cheaper to keep her. And so I was like, oh, it made sense. Light bulb just went off in my head. But it's easier said than done because if you've ever been in love, you know that it's not easy. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And there are a lot of things that can go wrong. There are a lot of conversations that you're not taught to have. And so we can look at the numbers in one aspect. And while that seems very straightforward, a lot of times those numbers tell a story and most people are not comfortable sharing theirs. And so I wanted to create a space where that became the norm and in turn help people to continue to build and maintain their net worth long term, but also their legacy as well. And so done a lot of seminars, worked with a lot of executives as far as not just financial planning, but also just having those altruistic conversations. Also released a book and a workbook called Modern Matrimony so that if they don't want to talk to me about their problems, hey, just grab the book, fill it
Yeah.
out with your partner at your leisure, and just connecting with professionals like yourself who can take everything to the next level and really dig deep into those conversations.
I love that so much. Amazing. So, okay, this is really cool because my journey also started it was about 10 years ago, but I was running a dental laboratory and a dental tech school. Yeah, very non-traditional. And back then, I became stuck and plateaued in my business. And so we just kept hitting this ceiling and we had to change something. And we had gotten read tons of books. We had gotten more employees, bigger machines, spent thousands of more dollars to grow our business, but we just kept hitting this ceiling and just got stuck and plateaued. And so that's when I got into NLP, which is one of the modalities that I use, and actually did a session where I unlocked something inside of me that for the first time I felt worthy of success. And worth and money and relationships, they're all interconnected. How we do one thing is going to be very similar to others, or sometimes that's not quite true. How we may show up in our business, putting a mask on, may be very different how we do relationships and how we look at money and protecting ourselves to keep ourselves safe and not having the real conversations that need to be had.
I agree. And that's a great point. If you don't mind, I'd like to just ask a question right out the gate. And so, to your point, executives are often trained to stay in control and suppress their vulnerability.
Hmm.
That works well in corporate America, in entrepreneurship, but how does that show up, at least having that mindset? How does that show up in their relationship and intimacy? whenever you've come into contact with that dynamic?
Well, I mean, a lot of people wear their masks, okay? It's an invisible mask, but behind the mask are all these walls of protection. So we're taught to be one way, be strong, be in control of your state, be at peak performance all the time when we're in corporate, right? But then when we get home, are we letting the walls down? Are we feeling like we can like we're home, like we're safe in a place where we can be vulnerable. And some people just don't feel like a lot of relationships can be very surface level because for one, they were never taught that vulnerability can is actually a strength. And there's different types of vulnerability, right? So if we're not actually letting our walls down and being all soft and gooey inside, I mean, there's one thing belief that's very common in men that crying makes you weak, that being vulnerable, right? So, and then when we think of money, and we're all brought up differently learning about money, right? Whether you've inherited a lot of wealth from generations and you see money in the way you've been taught in that way, or maybe you've grown up really ass poor, so you haven't really been taught, but now you've learned how to make money. Like there's so many different aspects, and it can be scary conversations, just like coming home from corporate, coming into a home. I mean, even in relationships, we're evolving. So we're constantly reaching new levels of depth and vulnerability in our hearts and opening them up. Even how long have you been married?
I was going to say, you're telling a lot of my business. Uh, but I just celebrated my third anniversary.
Dang. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so
And
3 years, you're in a way different place than you were in one, right?
oh, absolutely. I don't think if I never learned patience and vulnerability at a just a whole new level, and like you said earlier, I was one of those men that was raised not to cry. You just soldier forth, life goes on. And my wife is the exact opposite. She's not a crybaby or anything like that, so I don't mean to say it that way. But she's very in tune with her emotions. She doesn't mind expressing them and sitting in her emotions.
Hmm.
I'm just like, let's go. And I had to learn to slow down to just experience those feelings and to understand hers as well. And I couldn't treat everything in the way that I do business.
No.
And finding that vulnerability, initially, it felt, I won't say like a chore. It felt like another task that I was working towards. And once I built up the habit of vulnerability, life in general just became a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah. The little things don't bother you as much. Other little things mean so much more and bring you so much joy. And to your point, like even the difference in growing up regarding finances, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon whatsoever.
Either.
Uh, my wife, her parents did very well, and I respect them for that. So we had a different mentality, even planning our wedding. And I always joke about this. She wanted to have a Disney princess wedding. I would have been fine having the wedding on Zoom. And for me, a lot of it was fear based. It was just I had never spent that much money on one event in a few hours. And, when I did see people that spent money on those types of ceremonies, it was more about impressing others and they didn't last. And
Yeah.
so I was complaining. I complained all the way up into the day of our wedding. But I'd be lying, Camilla, if I told you that I didn't have the time of my life. And so for me, it was a freeing experience to just let it happen.
Yeah.
And it's been a positive, slippery slope since then. So
Yeah, amazing. And
thank you.
I feel like so many people, even myself, like I was married for 20 years and I've been divorced for 2.5 years now. And there's points where like you've been hurt so much that you numb yourself or you dissociate, right? So, or put that mask on thicker so that nobody gets in and or put a wall up around your heart so nobody can get in. And I'm very like help my clients be very aware of those things. And what are those things? And how about we get to the root of what's actually created that? Because a lot of the times it's actually rooted in childhood. It can even be when they were two, depending on your upbringing. You could even have a really good upbringing, but there could have been a fight going on with your parents that caused you to think something to protect yourself instead of getting hurt in a relationship, you know? So there's a lot of different dynamics that we're taught and conditioned growing up that we act out from when we were children and we bring that into our relationships. Even money, even money, you know, they're interconnected.
Hmm.
And so yeah, just helping people understand it's okay to be vulnerable. It's a superpower to be able to feel and because look, if you're numbing yourself, you're also not feeling joy and happiness and love. If you're not allowing yourself to get hurt in the best way possible, like the good kind of hurt, and sometimes it's not the good kind of hurt. But it's really important to drop into our bodies and be able to feel both and allow yourself to feel all the emotions and all the feels.
So I want to ask you how, because my situation may be different than someone who's viewing today's session, right?
Right.
And I think through business, negotiation starts to become second nature. And so a lot of times, and you've heard it throughout your career as well, it's not you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate.
Yeah.
So with high earners, a lot of times we feel more comfortable negotiating multi-million dollar deals than telling our spouse or our significant other what we need in a relationship. So from your area of expertise, how do you coach high net worth individuals or high earners to close that gap? What are some steps that they can take to turn off the boardroom language or dialogue and get what they need from their partner without feeling, and I don't mean to sound contradictory. I know that we're leaning towards vulnerability, but the first few times that you're being vulnerable with somebody, it does feel very awkward. It feels like you're naked in a bad way.
Yeah.
So how do you close that gap?
Well, I think one important thing is I don't think we need to shut it off, but how can we take the damn good skills that we already have in the boardroom into our relationship? So, for example, don't you think that your spouse or your partner is far more valuable than a multi-million dollar deal? Your spouse is priceless, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And really, our partners are, it's a partnership of several agreements. We're
Mhm.
constantly agreeing on things, which means negotiation is happening 24/7 in our relationships. Even that moment you get a text, it's a yes, it's an agreement. Oh my gosh, yes, right? So if it's a no, then we're trying to find agreement within the no, even if it's I want to disagree while agreeing with you, or I agree to disagree, right? So it's bunch of layered agreements. Why aren't we using negotiation skills to get what we need with our relationship? And it usually comes down to being scared of actually asking for what we need. Because what if I ask for this? For example, maybe we're not getting enough sex.
Hmm.
Maybe that's the biggest thing, and you feel like your partner's more of a roommate. Well, how do we open up the agreement or open up the conversation of more opening up more options to the relationship. Ooh, because could that mean that it might hurt someone or tell somebody that I'm not satisfied? So, actually getting to the root of where those negative emotions are and what's actually surfacing and clouding our mind when we actually resolve the deeper unfulfilled need within ourselves, not with our partner, but ourself, then it
Mm.
actually gives us clarity on how to actually and gaining better communication skills on how to open up the conversation of what needs that we are needing, even if that makes sense. So if you,
It it does. So I have a question about the question I asked,
you're good.
because you made a valid point that a lot of times it's about really not just accepting but embracing that there's a lack of some sorts or there's some type of deficiency internally and being comfortable to ask the other person. A lot of high achievers have some type of ego,
Yeah.
whether that is a natural born ego, whether it's something like you said, just a mask that they wear. There's an ego attached somewhere. With that ego, there's oftentimes a fear of rejection.
Hmm.
When you work with executives and others, how do you help them get past that fear of rejection?
Well, that fear of rejection is usually coming from a root cause of some sort. It could be when they were two. It could be there, and there's a process of how I guide them to getting to the root cause of it. It could even be a generational issue going on. And so helping them actually pinpoint the very root cause of where that's actually coming from and releasing that will change everything from them because it's like our minds are like a supercomputer. So think of a supercomputer. When there's bugs and there's like stuff going on with your computer and you update it, it it removes all the bugs from the computer. It updates it to a better, newer program, right? So that it even the computer runs smoother. It's sometimes it's like a whole new computer again. And so when we get to the root of those things and clean out all the bugs and clean out all the stuff going on and upgrade your mind, then it creates space to have better conversations and lets go of those fears and underlying issues that are actually going on to be able to create space to feel confident in yourself and your relationship to ask for those needs that are unfulfilled. But if you never ask, then how could you ever get a need fulfilled? And then we find people going elsewhere. That's why where cheating happens because they're not fulfilling or they're avoiding or they have this emptiness and they're fulfilling it elsewhere
Mm.
instead of just facing it with their spouse.
Do you feel that infidelity, whether physical, emotional, financial, do you feel that that ever leads to actual fulfillment, or do you feel that's more a distraction?
I think it could be both. It could be
Mm.
in avoidance, in facing it with your partner and fulfilling it elsewhere. So yes, it can have fulfillment in it, but the cheating's never the actual problem. It's the underlying issues because even for okay, I'm going to give you a very different take when it comes to
Hey,
cheating.
I'm all for it.
I don't believe that cheating is bad. In fact, it can actually save and help strengthen a lot of marriages. In fact, there's a lower percentage of people's marriages going to through divorce, through cheating, than people actually just wanting different things in their lives. The percentage is much lower for cheating for many, many other things, surprisingly. And when the cheating happens, it actually is a really great way for the cheated on person to look at themselves and their part in the relationship to see how they can actually reinvent themselves as well, because maybe they weren't a safe place to come to. Maybe they had just as equal part to play, and they could have been going elsewhere emotionally. They were not emotionally there for their spouse. Or maybe they turned off their sex drive and rejected their spouse so far beyond. And yes, we have our own bodies and we have our rights to our bodies. Yet when we sign a piece of paper that is legal and we're committing to a person, sex is like the one thing that sets a love relationship apart from a friendship, even. Sex is the one thing. So, and we can turn off and turn on our sex drive just as easy, both. So maybe there was some hurts or some past traumas that are surfacing that a person is suppressing and turning themselves off for good reason. But I mean, they just have both sides have equal. It's interesting because there's always a contrast, right? The further one to one side, the further there is to the other side. So neither is innocent. They
I
have
mean,
equal parts to play.
hey, that works.
And we find fulfillment when we're empty in something, we will grasp onto anything to fulfill what is empty inside. It's the behavior of people. We always want more, and we have unfulfilled expectations. So we'll seek until we get it.
So that's a good segue. We're approaching the holidays. You got Sweetest Day, Thanksgiving, birthdays, Christmas, New Year. A lot of time drinks are flowing, emotions are high, family members are around. If there's going to be some type of blow up, it's usually in the next 3 months or so.
Yeah.
Um, what advice would you give someone who is feeling disconnected from their partner or who is struggling or who is overwhelmed at work? And it may not be a problem with the partner. It's just they have a lot going on. What tips would you give them to not just maintain the peace over the next few months, but to just to make it maybe take a step closer to healing or to genuine progress in their relationship or in their financial situation with their partner?
Well, honesty is the best. And I think the worst is to do whatever you can to keep the peace, because then you become someone you're not. And when you gain better communication skills, I'm going to give a really good tip. Two. One is never dump your shit into your partner's lap and say it's theirs and that they need to do something about it, because that's actually very manipulative and can lead into abuse. So
Can
instead,
you give an example?
yeah. So when you say, Delante, you've got a problem with your beautiful wife, and you go to her and you say, you did this and this and this to me, and it makes me feel like shit, and I can't believe that you would do that. Like, it makes me feel all these things. You give her no solution. You just dump all your shit into her lap, expecting her to fix you and the problem when it's your own problem, your own feelings. You're responsible for your own feelings. Yes, she may have done something, but the better way would be to say, let's say she told a friend something she shouldn't have.
Hmm.
in you and her. The better thing would be to say, hey, what's your wife's name, Delante?
Jasmine.
Jasmine. Ooh, Jasmine, you texting that your friend about our, personal private issues really made me feel like you stabbed me in the back. And it just doesn't feel good. And what I would like next time for when you feel like you're going to share something that is so private, if you would ask me for permission.
Mm.
See,
Makes sense to me.
see the difference?
Hmm.
Because then you're actually telling a need. You're you're giving a new expectation, a new agreement. And she can even be like, oh, well, shoot, I didn't even think about that. This is what I was trying to do. My intentions were this, because we can have the greatest intention and it could actually hurt people, right?
Hmm.
So instead, she could even be like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm so sorry. What if I did this? Now we're negotiating. What if I did this instead? That's actually more in alignment with her personality and her path of what would be better for her. Instead of you trying to change her in the way she's behaving, you find agreement, the sweet spot for both of you that is a yes for you both.
I can see the logic in that.
Yeah. Yeah. But then even before you go and talk to Jasmine about it, I would be digging into the issue of why did that hurt you? Why do you even give a fuck in the first place? Right? It could
Hmm.
be because you're sitting here building up this reputation and you care enough to have people thinking good about you, right? And
Hmm.
so you care about that. We care about how people perceive us. But where did that come from? Where's the root of that? It could have been when you were 5 years old and you were bullied at school. And that was not okay. So now we're getting to the root of all of those fears, all of the hurts, the past stuff that's going on. So you can release it and show up in your relationship without this triggered, emotionally charged thing that you're taking to your partner. You're actually calm and collected, you resolved it, and still you get to reset new boundaries and negotiate.
That's a good tool.
Yeah. I got a question for you.
Sure. What's that?
With all the work that you do around money with couples and with such high net worth individuals, like what are the top fights do people have around money?
Yeah, I'm glad you said around money. I was gonna say, oh, it can be anything. Uh,
Money specifically.
so the interesting thing that I've noticed, and I've had couples go at it in the meeting, and so regardless of how intense it is, it can be snarky comments, it could be raised voices, it could be literal like pushing a chair and storming out. It's rarely about the numbers. You said something earlier that really resonated. It's really about what those numbers represent. That
Yes.
could be something from childhood, that can be someone's ego, it could be their fears. And so the top three areas that I see people fight about when it comes to money are control,
Mm.
communication, and contribution. And I did not mean for all of those three to start with the C, but they just happened to. And so control is a big aspect because one partner may feel like the other one is making all the decisions without them, or that
Mm.
they've shut them out of the process. The other partner may feel that they have to push things forward because the other person may not be as assertive, they may not be as astute. And this happens when you have one person in a couple who might be a type A personality and the other person is more laid back. And what starts off, like you said earlier, with good intention can start to build some resentment over time. And so that's where communication comes in handy Because if we're not communicating, we usually jump to assumptions, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to replace the conversation. So you may have that same couple, and the person who's type A that wants to meet every 2 weeks, wants to get things squared away, they're doing that because there's some type of concern or there's some type of goal that they have. The other person may think, well, we already have a meeting scheduled with the planner in 2 weeks. Like, we'll figure it out. And they want to spend freely. And so communicating what that common ground is very important. And then when it comes to high earners, contribution plays a huge part. And I think it's kind of, I keep using words start with a C. I think it's contradictory to the control because sometimes the person who feels that they're contributing the most, they start to feel tension and feel that their value in the relationship is based on what they earn or what they provide.
Mm,
And so it becomes, do you really love me? Do you really care for me? Or do you just want the material aspects? Do you like the comfort? And a lot of times you see when arguments come up, that's when truth usually comes out. And so for high earners, those issues get amplified because they feel there's more at stake. So it's not just always financial, but it's also emotional and social because I don't know who I can trust. And if I'm paying for everything, I can't tell if you're really here for me. And so the more money there is on the table, the more meaning people usually attach to it.
yeah, it's true. It's so true.
Unfortunately, it's a gift and a curse. It's a gift and a curse. And that's why I asked you earlier, like, where do you find that vulnerability? Because especially if someone's been hurt before, if
Mhm.
they've been used before, if not treated properly, it does start to turn into control, or it does start to turn into almost harboring resources just in case. And you might have had somebody who used you for a dinner 5 years ago, and now you have somebody who's genuinely interested in you, and you can't tell the difference.
Yeah. And the intentions could change. And I come across people that they agreed in the relationship that say the mom is going to be a stay-at-home mother and the kids have grown like they've grown up, so they're in school, right? And now the mother could work, but she just lays around in bed, and now the husband feels like, well, I'm just a paycheck.
Mm. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that. And we live in a society today where, what do they call them? Trad wives, like traditional wives and trad husbands and all. They have a nickname for everything. I sound like such an old man saying that. But I recently had a conversation with someone who was not in that exact predicament, but just hearing both sides of the story. The person who may be the stay-at-home, there's a different type of sacrifice that they make, and I don't know if it always gets brought up. And so I'm just going to use it as a soapbox to advocate for both because for the person who's providing, well, it's very easy to resonate. It's like, oh, you pay for everything. Like, yeah, I see why you feel that way. The person who may have given up, and not the person who's manipulating. So I'm not vouching for that person at all, but the
Right.
person who had goals and aspirations, they sacrificed for the family, and now when they go to a job interview, they're asking them, "Hey, why haven't you done this in 15 years?" And their confidence is shot, or they're so used to being a support person for their partner, and a lot of times you see this as they start to age where it's like, hey, well, you just stayed at home this time. It's like, well, why don't you try switching tasks with me and see how hard that can be? And so I think when it comes to that dynamic, it's a gift, it's a blessing to be able to provide in the year 2025 to be able to provide a substantial lifestyle off of one income. And I think along the lines, like I said earlier, communication gets flustering between the two people. But if you step back, if everybody's still on the same page, I think there's still a beauty that you can still have a stay-at-home spouse in 2025, and it's not so bad.
Yeah. Well, and when we change the way we see things and change the way our agreements are, right? Because we're always evolving. We're all growing. There's times and seasons of life. There's times when you're doing diapers and feeding your kids, and that's all there is to life is kids, kids, kids. And then they
Hmm.
grow older and now they go to school. And so now it's going to look different, and the role of the mother is going to be different. I know, I remember when my kids were going to school, and without the kids in the home, I just felt like a homemaker and a maid. And then I was
Yep.
like, well, what is there for me? Which took on this whole journey of doing what I do now. And and it's like reinventing yourself and the relationship and creating new agreements, right? Yeah. And okay, well, if you're, how about instead of you laying in bed all day because you're all depressed because you have no purpose anymore because your kids are gone, I'm gonna fucking make something of myself. But not every person is like that, nor do they have a drive or, but what really lights you up again and really figuring that out and how do we create a new partnership that is thriving again, And there was the whole COVID, tons of divorce, people getting divorced after COVID because it changed the whole dynamic of relationships. And I think that if more people got therapy or if they really looked within themselves instead of blaming their spouse, and took responsibility for their own life, I think that more relationships would have stayed together. Because really, if you divorce, the same damn problems follow you into the next relationship. They just do until you actually resolve it within yourself. So I've had to do a whole reinvention of myself too. And you know what? I wanted to save my marriage. And if he would have gone and got help with me and rekindled things and resparked things, I would I would have said, yeah, let's keep doing this. But he didn't want to. So there's always a reinvention, and I'm learning brand new communication skills so that those problems that I had in the marriage that I allowed certain things to happen, I won't tolerate them anymore. And creating a new version of myself and what that looks like. So if you can save your marriage, you will not only save millions of dollars or thousands of dollars, you will save an infinite amount of pain and frustrations and breaking up a family. And especially if you have children, do it. It's so worth it. And it could honestly, like I look back and I'm glad where I am now because I can make the grass green wherever I am.
Mhm.
Yet there's also no way I could be who I am today without leaving that relationship that kept me re restricted in a box. And it didn't allow evolution or growth or any of it. So also, is it worth leaving? In some cases, it also is. And it is worth the pain and it can be worth losing money because you can always gain the money back too. And you can gain a whole new sense of self that's quite freeing and liberating.
I hear that. So you mentioned something earlier about going to therapy, and I was someone who was dragged to therapy myself. I think it's one of those things, like there's an old adage, I don't know if it's a fact, I never tried it for myself. They say if you put a frog and if you drop a frog into a boiling pot, it'll jump out. But
Hmm.
if you put a frog into a pot of water at room temperature, and then you start to heat it up slowly, and once it starts to boil, the frog never catches on, never jumps out. I think that is the same adage for a lot of people who, like you said, you are ambitious, you have these goals, and you place such a standard of excellence on your work. That's what you're known for. I don't think that everyone, and I'm not saying that this is the right way to look at them, The facts are the facts. I don't think everyone looks at relationships the same way that they look at their profession. And I think that's where the therapy doesn't always have the same value on the surface because you think that you can always fix a relationship. You think it's just feelings. And, you know, if I'm just being very transparent here, my wife and I, we joke all the time, like, we're not letting each other divorce the other. Like, it's like, nope, you're not going anywhere. And that comes from, there was a time where she wanted to talk and talking just wasn't my thing. Like, it's like, yeah, whatever. And I would work through it or just stay busy. And then one day I realized I hadn't talked to her in like 2 weeks. And it wasn't like that she wasn't important, that I just ignored her for 2 weeks.
Right. But like,
Like, I,
oh, right.
well, no, she said, like, I'm just gonna go. And it's like, I should be back. And she didn't come back. It was like, oh, oh, life is different. And like how like they have the cartoons with the little squiggly lips when they're about to cry.
Yes.
And like it that was a vulnerability that I didn't necessarily expect. Like I said, the ego and all that stuff, it was there. I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. And then it's just like, hey, life is very different without you. I'm doing the same things, I'm just not enjoying them as much.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, what were you saying? And I realized that there was a communication, not a barrier. I would say we were speaking two different, I don't use love languages. I want all the love languages. But we were speaking on two different levels as far as, you know, her feelings didn't always come out as concise and blunt and direct as mine.
Hmm.
And I'm a literal person. You tell me shut up. All right, I'll stop talking.
Oh, yeah.
Shut up. Yeah, shut up means talk to me more. And I had to learn that, right? And that's where therapy started to show some value. And I stopped looking at it as, hey, like you're basically trying to say like there's something infinitely wrong with me or wrong with us that we just need a third person to referee for us all day, every day. I think once I started to look at it as a translator,
Yes.
that was very helpful. Where it was like, hey, like I want to get along with you. I want you around. You want to be around me. Why is this not clicking? Like we're both yelling, but I'm not fighting you. I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting to get to you. And there's something that just can't get here. And you bring in a third person who barely knows the two of you, and after like 20 minutes of listening to you, they're like, oh, she said this, he said that. It's like, oh, well, why didn't you just say that? And then
Yeah.
you realize that sometimes you need somebody to help create a third language in your household.
Yes.
And so that was very helpful for us. And we started going before we were married. So a lot of work and time and effort was put into that. Because I'm not paying for another wedding. Like, nope, not doing that. And I don't think she wants to either. So all jokes aside, I think that third language in the home has helped tremendously, even when we talk about finances. Um, Once again, I grew up, I never had a safety net. I
Mhm.
am the safety net,
Yeah.
right? So I'm kind of thrifty. It doesn't matter how you give me $10 million in cash right now, nobody will know. You give her 10,000, she won't go spend it crazy, but we're taking a trip somewhere. Like we're going somewhere.
Yeah.
Uh, and it for a while I used to think that her way of thinking about money was going to sabotage what I wanted for myself.
Mm.
It took us being able to have a conversation in that third language where it's like, hey, nobody has the advantage. Where do we find this middle ground to realize that, hey, I can have that financial security, which you learn in life, security doesn't really exist, but I can have that sense of peace. I can have that peace of mind, and you can have the growth and experiences, and they don't have to necessarily be either or. We just have to be intentional to make sure that you're getting what you need and I'm getting what I need, and
Yeah.
nobody's taking advantage of the other. And so that's what therapy, like, that became my jam. And so now, like, whenever we have a day and we're just like, I don't get you. It's like, you want to call a therapist? Yeah, sure. Like, we'll text her there. Like, boom, boom.
Love that.
And usually it's not as big of a deal as what we're both feeling. And so if anyone's listening and they are like me, where it's like, hey, I'm not going to talk to a shrink. I am not. I don't even know if there's a politically correct word to say anymore. I'm not fucking crazy. Like I don't, I'm not going. It's not about somebody dissecting your whole life. Eventually, if you let them in, they may and it may help you. But sometimes, if you want to keep your significant other and you want to keep your money, spend that couple $100, give it a shot, have the conversation, give it an honest attempt. Don't go in there with your arms folded and
Yeah.
just look at the clock the whole time. Start small, start with something that's not too personal to you. If you argued about, your wife keeps sticking her fork in your plate and she thinks it's cute and you're hungry and you don't like it, start with that. Or, ladies, you don't like that he doesn't put the toilet seat down. Something like that. You can start small, but you start to realize that when you say stuff out loud, you got a third person who's like, it's not that deep. You're like, oh, it's really not.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can keep the relationship if you really want to.
You really can. When when the relationship is worth saving for you and you're convinced that it's worth saving, which is just a decision, really, then you got to give it all you got. And just like as important it is to have a therapist, it's also just as important to have a financial advisor because it's also that third person to help you get on the same ground because we come from such different backgrounds. How do you get on the same page with someone and having separate individual goals and then your one common goal together? Because you can have it all. And
That's
I
it.
think that when we get into this lack mindset of things is when we start penny pinching and no matter how much money you make, I mean, many of my high net clients, they still worry about money because there's
Yeah.
different types of investments and different things that things go to, right? And so
Mhm.
and then depending on if they want a legacy or if they want generational wealth, it's always a thing. And so to get on the same page and be able to create your goals, which, we're coming to a new year, you should be making new money goals and new relationship goals. Both of those are equally as important. And then if you can do it on your own, fantastic. If you need help, go get help. And whatever person just resonates the best with you and is most in alignment with your beliefs, that you can integrate all aspects to achieve your goals, then really what is $200? What is 2,000? What is $20,000 to invest in your relationship and in your money, or even $50,000 when you're at a multi-million dollar mark, you know? It's really nothing. So start putting your relationship on a whole new level of looking in that it's actually the greatest asset that you should be investing in, really, is your relationship. And that takes money and investment.
Yeah. I want to piggyback on that. A couple things. Finding a financial planner that you like is just as hard as finding a therapist that you like. Because money is emotional. Money is sensitive. We like to think that it's not, but it's oftentimes tied to a story. It's oftentimes tied to a purpose. It could be tied to a fear. And like you said, finding someone who's aligned with you, but I would say also finding someone that you feel comfortable challenging you and holding you accountable to your goals because you do start to develop a relationship over time. It starts off dollars and cents, coverage here, coverage there. Let's look at this paperwork. Starts off boom, boom, boom. But, as you start to really get into these things, and it happens more times than not, where, people start off with the financial planner, same way they start with a therapist, where it's like, hey, like, can I retire tomorrow? It's like, I just met you 5 minutes ago. I don't know nothing about you, and you want me to put this on paper that
Yeah.
it's something else. You want me to hold myself accountable. It's like, hey, I need you to share this with me. And it's like, well, you don't need all that. And and you understand, I'm human. I had the same problem. I looked for a financial planner. Funny thing is, my business partner now was actually my financial planner when I was a police officer. So we don't have no time for that story, but I get it. But the more you start to share these things you hold near and dear, the faster the plan starts to become a reality. It becomes a tangible roadmap for yourself. So, interview financial advisors, take a meeting with them, talk to them, see if you like talking about life, see if they get you, see if they can hold you accountable because you don't want a yes man or yes woman. You don't want somebody who's just like, okay, okay, okay. Somebody's got to tell you the truth.
Yes.
So that's the first thing. And then the other thing that you mentioned was the value of your relationship. And I agree with you 1,000% when they say that money can't buy love.
Mm,
Can
it can.
like it can't. Um, I jokingly talk about like all the video games now have these upgrades to use real money to buy fake money to buy things on the video games, right? Whether it's on your phone, whether it's Candy Crush, whether it's Madden, whether it's 2K Call of Duty, virtual currency is a thing. Same thing with the relationship. It's like, hey, you can throw money at it all day, but if you don't take the time and put the effort to really hone your skills, it still goes nowhere. It's the one thing that you should take the most pride in
Yes.
because you have to earn it.
Yes.
If I want to go buy a new car tomorrow, say, hey, let me talk to my tax person. Let's look at the weight, time of year. Do I want to buy it outright? Do I want to do an open end lease? All these different things, right? It's like that's just numbers. And you have to earn that too. So respect to whatever, amount of energy, effort, and thought that you've put into build your business because that's not to be overlooked. But you can buy it. You can just throw
Yeah.
something that is done. With the relationship, that is a report card of who you are when no one's looking over the years. And so if your report card with significant others shows that hey, this person usually doesn't tell the truth, and don't take my word for it, you can ask a lot of people who are in the business world, and oh my gosh, she might be watching this. My wife has a friend. She loves to debate. She loves to debate, but we love her dearly. And before we got married, she always said, married men, they make more money. And I was like, all right, did you set her up for this? And she's like, no, like people just look at them differently. And I thought that she was just talking crazy for no reason. But a part of it is true. Like now that I'm married and I talk to other married people, it's not about the actual relationship. It's a quick way to gauge someone's character and accountability. And so that's not saying that you can't be successful if you're not in a marriage. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. But if you value relationships, there is some return of interest in
Yeah.
pouring into your partner versus just replacing them because eventually you might come across a circumstance where somebody's like, hey, this is like the eighth person I've seen you with. I might do a little bit of digging versus if they know that you have a partner that holds you accountable, it's usually a quick decision like, oh, yeah, no, you can trust that person. And so just some food for thought. It's not 100%. Oh, it's not all binding. It's just something that somebody said to me and I brushed it off. And then a bunch of people started saying it, and I was like, oh, okay, I see it a little differently now. So that was a long-winded way of me saying that, you take your time, find an advisor if it fits you, but your relationship is your report card and you can't buy it.
You can't.
Can't chat GPT that thing.
No. I mean, you can chat GPT it, but you can only get so far.
Oh, you got to put the work in. You
Yeah,
have to.
you absolutely do. So yeah, so in closing, let me ask you one last question. To give people a visualization and give them an idea of what a healthy, of course, we know there are so many different types of relationships, but generally, what does a really healthy relationship look like when it comes to money and investments? And when you see someone come in, maybe they're not quite healthy in money yet, but by the time they're leaving, what does that healthy relationship look like when you see them leaving and having a smile on their face and they've gotten the that spark back within them in the money area of their relationship? What does that look like for people?
It's a good question. And I think we can wrap today's conversation all into this one answer. Because when I think of a healthy relationship, it's transparent.
Hmm.
The word that you said a few different times, and every time you said, I just smile, aligned
Hmm.
and accountable. And so both people understand and accept where they are. They have a somewhat clear vision of where they're going. By the time we're finished, it needs to be very clear. Otherwise, I didn't do my job. And they both have a definition of what's enough. So
Hmm.
what will we both be content with? What's that middle ground that we both walk away satisfied? And an older person told me this before. Happiness is based on things happening. Joy is present, ever present. So when we say content, it's more so like, hey, if we hit all of our marks, I'm satisfied. If there's a small hiccup 2 weeks afterwards, I'm not gonna just throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm sorry, I'm using all these old people adages.
I love it.
Like we need to find a middle ground that we're both going to stay in and say, okay, this is ground zero where we know that we made it. And then there's a respect for their different financial personalities. So, like we've talked about it earlier, depending on someone's background or what they've been through more recently, or just how they're wired, they can be a spender, they can be a saver, they can be an investor. Everyone needs to feel valued. Everyone needs to feel valued because if they don't feel valued, and they don't have that center of where we're aligned and what's content. I'm going to keep saying that word, content, where it's enough. When it gets to be unhealthy, that's when we start seeing some of the things that we've discussed today, where they're avoiding certain things. You build up that resentment. You have secrecy. All these things I call financial infidelity. And so, where somebody's making purchases behind their back, they're literally cheating or giving money to the other, or sometimes they just disengage entirely because they feel unheard. So, you don't want that. And so, just having a process, once again, that starts with honesty. So, drop the judgment. You know,
Yes.
nobody's perfect. Even though I'm the financial planner, I've made mistakes to learn about this stuff. Some of this stuff is trial and error, and I found it out. So I'm going to tell you because I did it and I meant, hey, you do it this way. So unpack the emotions under the behavior. So figure out why, and it's not something that you need to come ready with on day one. Just be open to really thinking, why do I do this? Or what happened where I feel this way, you know?
Yeah,
And so until you do that, you know, until you really understand the story, you can't build a strategy.
it's true.
You have to know where you are going and where you are before you where you've been and where you are before you know where you're going. And so understanding that why behind the habits is important. And so all of those things coming together, when you're able to honor both perspectives, that's when that accountability, and I'm just using the same words in circle intentionally, right? Because they
Yeah.
all tie in together. So that accountability, where, like you said in the very first question that I asked you, where initially it can feel that someone's kind of an overlord, they're judging you and they're harping on everything that you do. You stop putting all of your stuff in their lap. You realize that, hey, these financial habits that I have are because of me. The way
Yeah.
that I see the world is because something happened to me. And I'm doing this because I want something for myself with this person. I want you for me. That's when accountability can feel empowering versus restrictive. And so that's what a healthy relationship with money looks like to me, where you want to do it, You want your partner to be a part of it, and both of you are aligned and knowing what's enough for both of you to have joy at the end of the process.
I love that. Amazing, Delante.
Thank you,
Thank
Camilla.
you so much for sharing all your knowledge. And of course, this is just a teensy bit of it, but it's been such a pleasure to really
Well,
learn more about what you do and how we can all have success in love and money, the two most important areas of life. It's what makes life rich, and true wealth is being rich, not so much in number, but inside, and the more love we can give and receive. And so thank you. I appreciate it.
well, my pleasure. Now, can I ask you a really quick question? I know that we're closing.
Yeah.
If I were to share this with my network, where can they find you?
Ooh, just go on www.camilla, like vanilla, Camilla, Peterson with a son.com. And they can just skim through. I've got some really great ebooks about relationships, the difference between traditional couple versus a spiritual couple. I've got some webinars on there. I've got quite a few things actually. I've got a little sex magic book on there and what NLP is. Yeah, I got a bunch of stuff on there, and they can even book a call with me if they want. So that'd probably be the best way. CamillaPeterson.com. How about you, Delante?
Also, everything of mine is Delante Greer, Delantegreer. So that's the same name on all social media, pretty much. I recently got a TikTok due to my godchildren, basically. And so I don't know how to feel about it. So on TikTok, it's modern matrimony. So like modern matrimony, or and when you go up to the sorry, when you go up to the altar and they say, so that does part in holy matrimony, but you add an E, matrimony. Sorry, I did not mean to make that
Like
that
money.
complex.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's late. So modernmatrimony.com for the books, but everything else pretty much Delante Greer. I'm easy to find.
Awesome. Oh, and our names are even on the Zoom video down there. So,
Oh, perfect.
yeah,
There you go.
that's where you can find us. Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure, Delante. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
this
for having
great
me.
conversation. And
My pleasure.
for those that are watching, feel free to comment below with any questions. We could always do a follow-up webinar, something like that. Yeah, just reach out to us. We'd be happy, more than happy to help you and serve you and see what we can do to help you on your way. Okay?
Absolutely.
All
All
right.
right.
Thank you, Delante. We'll see ya.
All right.
Bye.